Hello, this is Dr. KK. I'm the Innovation Officer at Trinka Inago, and this is PubShorts, episode 16, While My Reviewer Gently Weeps. And I have with me Tony O'Rourke. Tony, you have a smile. You have it's a chuckle in it.
Once again, we select another excellent song to base this episode around.
Well,
Yes, I'm Tony O'Rourke. I'm VP for Partnerships here in Inago, and I look after the commercialization of our language services as well as our AI services into the publishing world.
so Tony, we have something big happening in the world of STM publishers this week, don't we?
Yeah, it's another good event.
So
We have the
we'll directly get to talking about it. So I'm going to share screen, and we are talking about the Innovation and Integrity Days by the STM Association. It is happening as we speak right now. So Tony, what is STM Association? What is this?
yeah.
And why is it relevant?
Well, the STM Association stands for I think it's something like the International Association of Scientific, Technical, and Medical Publishers. I think that's the abbreviation.
Mm-hmm.
They are one of the world's largest professional societies specifically for scholarly publishing. So their members are, the great and the good of the scholarly publishing world. So Elsevier, Wiley, anyone you can imagine that is a major contributor into this ecosystem will be a member of STM. And this particular event, although it's got a new name, there's STM run a number of education and networking events, part of its training and outreach program. And they've every December for at least the last 20 plus years, they've had 2 or 3 days specifically looking at aspects relating to the future of technology, the future of processes within scholarly publishing, and the Innovation and Integrity Days is the latest version of that.
Right.
Some of our colleagues are there this week.
Right. I'm excited about it. I mean, we find our names here, Inago and Charlesworth. So we are presenting something. So Tony, could you briefly describe what we are presenting in the fair?
Well, we're presenting our technology solutions for publishers specifically. So we'll be looking at some of the AI tools that we have, like our new peer review assistants. As we're also developing a chatbot, for example, an AI-based chatbot, which will be used by publishers, as well as our AI-based checking and language control tools.
And Tony, among all the things that you just described, can you guess what I am most excited about?
Oh. Sorry. What are you most excited about, KK?
The peer review assistant, because AI and peer review have to go together. And our first story that we're covering is about this exact thing, and it's a article from Inside Higher Education. It is titled "AI Can Lessen Peer Review Woes, Researchers Say." So I'll quickly read out some points. So researchers at the Stanford University and George Mason University have studied the potential of AI in peer review and found that humans and AI reviews and feedback are comparable, which is not news, is it, Tony?
It's not news at all. I mean, I think we haven't had a PubShorts in the last few weeks where we haven't talked about this topic in some way.
Right. But they suggest that AI should be used as a tool, not as a replacement for human reviewers, and that it's important to address any biases, whether they come from humans or AI. Very, very solid. And interestingly, the article recommends support of the complementary use of AI, but raises concerns about systemic issues like bias. And it also recommends ethical AI integration, strategic implementation, transparent usage. We have talked about it. And the thing that I really resonated with is system-wide collaboration. And this is the reason why I'm also very excited about our AI peer review assistant, because we are hoping that it can be integrated system-wise across publishers and the reviewers who need help, which is why we are calling the episode "While My Reviewer Gently Weeps." They need help, and we can provide the right ethical help for peer review.
And I think part of the challenge today is that reviewers are overburdened. I think somebody in one of the latest papers we talk about reviewer fatigue, and there is reviewer fatigue, because the number of papers that are being sent out to reviewers every month is increasing, and the number of reviewers that are available to do those reviews, if anything, it's reducing, because more and more publishers are saying, and more reviewers, I should say, are not able to accept every invitation that comes their way.
Right. And
so anything that will help their experience, I think, has got to be seen as a positive thing. Anything that improves the reviewer experience and makes them want to review.
Right. I'm moving on to the next story, which is An interesting one. I'm sure that you have a question as to what this means, Tony. Research, MetaROR, which is an open peer review platform for meta research. So, Tony, do you know what meta research is?
Tell me what Metaresearch is. I googled it before this podcast started, but if you'd like to remind everybody else.
Yes, so meta research is a study of the research practices and methodologies, which is similar to, this is the best analogy that I could come up with, a mechanic, Tony, examining the tools and the processes of car manufacturing to improve the efficiency and quality in the automotive industry, which makes sense, right? As in, it's a meta sort of review of all those research related practices. So meta ROR, which is developed by RORI, research. I forget what is the expansion of it. I forget the. I'm sorry about it, but anyway, the RORI and the Association for Interdisciplinary Meta Research and Open Science, AMOS. This is a new platform for open peer review in meta research. So it is limited to meta research that uses publish, review, curate model to enhance communication and transparency. Now, it is free both for authors as well as readers, and it aims to tackle the accessibility issues and promote community ownership. And the good news, as in, even though this is relatively limited in scope, many journals like and publishers like eLife, F1000 Research are using the publish, review, curate model. So it seems to be the way forward, and it was an interesting news article. Tony, your thoughts?
Anything that improves the quality of research has got to be seen as a positive thing. I mean, what this is doing is giving a framework for these large professional associations to help publishers, to help reviewers, and to help authors. So I think, I'm interested to see where this goes.
And RORI stands for Research on Research Institute. The Research on
Research
Institute. Yes,
that's right.
So I forgot that right off the top of my head. And the next one is also, the next article that we're covering is also a peer review related article. This is published in JMIR publications, and it is a news item or an announcement. It basically says JMIR publications integrates with Web of Science to recognize peer reviewers. And Tony, peer reviewers need recognition, don't they?
Need recognition. It's interesting that Web of Science has this program. I mean, a number of years ago they acquired Web of Science, or Clarivate, their owners, acquired a company called Publons, and Publons' job was all around providing methods to reward what they do. Right. Because reviewers traditionally aren't paid. So anything that will recognize their work has got to be seen as a positive thing.
Right. So I wasn't aware of what this reviewer recognition service is. So I looked it up. It is a free service enabling researchers to track, verify, and showcase peer review contributions, and it supports the recognition of reviewers' efforts in maintaining research quality. Very important, I would argue. And so JMIR Publications has now announced the deal. It's an opt-in one, but it allows reviewers to track, verify, showcase the reviews, even for anonymous or unpublished manuscripts, Tony.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder how they're going to deal with that. I'm sure they've got a mechanism that manages that. But the whole point about anonymous review is that nobody knows anybody. The reviewer doesn't know who the author is. The author doesn't know who the reviewer is. And if later on down the line the reviewer's name is revealed, that's managed. I'm sure they have a mechanism to deal with it.
Yes, and so I again feel that this is a way forward, and one of the reasons why we have such conversations about peer review is a reviewer's recognition.
And this is one of a number of organizations that provides credit, if you like, recognition for reviewers. Another one is reviewer credits, for example, which also offers ways to reward reviewers for the efforts that they do.
Right. And Tony, the next one is also maybe about peer review, but it has an interesting aspect to it. So this was brought to our attention from Scalene blog, which talks about AI and peer review. And this was first reported in the previous edition of the blog. And this week's edition, it turned out that this paper, the paper titled "The Obsolescence of Traditional Peer Review: Why AI Should Replace Human Validation in Scientific Research," turns out to be, at least it has enough signals to suggest that it's an AI-generated fake author written contribution. And it's a non-peer reviewed Preprints.org article. So Tony, were you surprised when you heard the news?
I don't know. I think I'd like to look at it a bit more before I comment. I mean, it's an interesting concept, and the whole principle, the whole concept of AI writing entire papers is not a new one.
Right.
but I'd be interested to see what supports this.
Right. So, Tony, first of all, the article talks about, the benefits, the pros and cons of peer review. It's a good read, actually. All we are now talking about is whether a human has written it or an AI has written it, right? So now we have been talking.
This author's written quite a lot of papers.
Yes, and that is one of the flags for it. So we've been talking about persistent research identifiers. So we have author identification using ORCID, and I happen to look up their ORCID. So this is some information that I feel like a detective right now. But anyway, so this researcher's profile was created in 2023, and they have 42 validated works. Now, if you go deeper into it, I think if I go back, so you will see that these are different subject matters: neural stabilizer devices, glioblastoma treatment, which is neuroscience, and now we are talking about brain wave configuration. There are some other genomics stuff. So it is. So the evidence that I have is that there's a lot of activity in a lot of different fields, and this researcher has been flagged to be potentially AI.
But I think we need to be quite careful. I mean, what this demonstrates is that there are tools which may identify whether an AI has been involved in the creation of a paper. But there's some very prolific authors out there. I've worked in subject areas where authors send us 40, 50, 60 papers a year, and these are not AI driven. So yes, there's a possibility, but I don't think we can say for certain.
Yeah, we always need evidence. So this is as per my sort of detective work in the last hour or so. And this this researcher's profile is not the Sci profile page is also not found, so that's another sort of maybe signal to indicate that this might be a legitimate researcher. So this is all I have to say. We could get tricked into reading AI generated research, or let's say non-human research.
I think there is exactly that. I think increasingly we don't really know yet how much content is being generated by AI.
Right.
And that obviously is an area of concern if there aren't rules around what should and shouldn't be allowed.
Right. And this is, we are talking about preprints.org, and we have another sort of related news item called preprint discovery. This I thought was fascinating, but it is related to the preprint.io, and it is so preprints.io is a blockchain based research platform that aims at fostering collaboration between human and artificial intellects to fund, conduct, publish, and implement research. Now, Preprints Discovery, Tony, is a new addition, and it is basically it collects signals regarding how papers are linked with each other and ascribes a score to it. So this is how it looks. These are scores based on its own scoring system. So it states that potentially important breakthroughs in the preprint ecosystem can be mathematically calculated, and that's how it's a fun thing. And what did you think about it when you saw it?
Well, I mean, the two papers made me think about the importance of peer review generally. I mean, traditionally, preprints don't perhaps have the same level of peer review rigor that a high-level scientific journal has, although they will have increasingly lots and lots of checks that they'll run against the content. So I think what this does is highlights the fact that as there is a problem within the traditional peer review system. So many papers will have to wait so long to get published or to get at least a decision that one could argue that it holds up the whole process of scientific communication. So having a means by which the importance of a paper, albeit a subjective one, can be I think is interesting, but I'd like to see how this evolves.
Yeah, so this system seems to analyze how the research connects to existing scientific work. Very important because science is built on a foundation, and it keeps on building. The networks keep on expanding, and the track record and the expertise of the research authors themselves. And it's a predictive scoring system. It is not claiming to be a replacement for peer review, but a potential stepping stone to removing human dependency. So I was very sort of pumped to sort of see both sides of it. There are AI algorithms helping to find, maybe ascribe a score for the significance of research. On the other hand, we have potentially AI generated research being presented as human on the same platform. So it's a nice sort of yin yang double-edged sword.
The interesting thing about preprints, I mean, preprints have existed preprints have existed as a concept for years and years and years, but as an electronic concept, they've existed since the early 1990s. And in certain subject areas, like high energy physics, for example, the preprints are the dominant is the dominant content. A high energy physicist will look at the preprint in archive long before they'll look at a journal article, because that gives them everything they need. And there's open commentary, there's open review, there's open discussion. There's a way of communicating that within that community that is established and works.
All right, so we go on to the last main topic, and this is one from Retraction Watch. It is themed on research integrity. So the title of the article is "The Mega Journal Cureus Kicks Out Organizations Critics Call Paper Mill." So it's a sort of a confusing title, but basically Cureus has taken some actions after several flags on research integrity in its publication. So what has it done? It has shut down 6 channels with questionable track record to prevent paper mill issues. So that's, that's all I have to say. So if somebody were to ask you, Tony, what are these channels that Cureus is talking about shutting down, what would you say?
Well, Cureus has, from what I understand, quite an interesting model in that it has its own submission process, but it also has a number of submission channels which it authorizes and uses. And one of the things I was keen to find out more was how much control Cureus has over these channels, and it has has oversight over all of them. But they're right to want to be able to respond, particularly after the recent criticism they had from being in Web of Science, for example, potentially withdrawn, if I understand it correctly, or at least in question.
Right.
So I think they're right to make these to do this investigation and to withdraw content that is questionable.
Right. And Tony, is it too little, too late for Cureus?
No, I don't think so. I think this is an evolution for us. We're at an interesting time, in the scholarly communication process. And I think what they'll find is they'll understand the impact of what they've been doing, and rectify moving forward.
Okay, we are going on to the one quick hit that we have, which is a very interesting article by Nature, and it is a Nature Index sort of a finding. So Nature Index gives you stats on publication trends, including research output. So Nature Index data in 2024, I think, regarding research output indicates that Chinese cities like Beijing and Shanghai are leading, and the latter, that is Shanghai, has overtaken New York, which is considered to be the high output, sort of a center. And, this is classical, right? China is increasing in research output. Your thoughts, Tony, when will China completely take over the research publication ecosystem?
Oh, in terms of volume, China is already the dominant source for content in scholarly journals today, or at least in terms of submissions. My interesting thing about this was the whole concept of science cities. I'm sure there are science cities in Europe, but we don't talk about them in the same way that cities like Chengdu and Wuhan and the cities in China, Tsukuba, for example, in Japan, are considered to be science hubs.
Right.
I'm just curious as to how that impacts on everyday life in these cities.
It's just metadata. So where is the researcher or the research based out of? That city is what we're talking about. So it's just analysis of metadata.
Oh no! I beg your pardon. No. In someone like Tsukuba, for example, it's much more than just metadata. In Tsukuba in Japan, it's a location where the Japanese government, historically at least in the last 20-30 years, have given special preference to encourage societies and institutions and universities to conduct their research or to open establishments in those areas. So I think there is a specific thing called a science city. In terms of measurement terms, which cities are responsible for the scientific output. I'm not surprised that Shanghai or Beijing, because they've got more universities per city than any other countries in the world, any cities in the world.
And Tony, I must have my tinfoil hat on, because I don't know, we are talking about Japan and there's an ad for a knife from Japan all of a sudden appearing on my web page. But anyway,
there you go. Somebody's listening to us.
Talking about Japan and research, Tony, we have a lot of clients across the world, but particularly in China and Japan and South Korea, and we are very excited to announce something today. So I'm going to switch to that page. Inago is announcing the release, of the Inago One platform. So are you excited about it, Tony?
Yes.
Okay.
I think anything that makes our service easier to use for researchers, I would encourage.
So if somebody were to ask me, Inago One is a one-stop solution for all publication needs. So Inago offers a lot of different services. Inago's AI brands have a lot of interesting tools, and Inago Academy offers learning resources. So we are bringing all of this under one umbrella. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Inago
yeah,
1 is.
yeah.
And apart from centralized access, one cool thing is that it has one login which lets you access everything. So it is an incredible development, considering that things are getting more and more complex, especially from a researcher point of view. You can find out more about it by visiting inago.com/1, and all the details are here, different stages of research, different things that you can do, and find out more about it. I'm very excited about it, especially considering that researchers are finding it more and more difficult to find things because there are so many things out there, Tony.
Yeah, and I think it's a natural I think development in terms of how we offer our services to our researcher clients, because I think traditionally we Inago was seen as a language services business, but we offer so much more than that. In terms of helping the researcher, not just in terms of preparing their manuscript, but also promoting their manuscripts,
right,
and understanding. So I would encourage every researcher watching this podcast now to create an account.
and
It's free to create an account.
yes, it is free, and please explore this and let us know what you think about it. But
And there's
also,
lots of free content in there as well.
yes.
Lots of really good free content, particularly from the Inago Academy.
And one thing that I was very happy to see under this brand is the research promotion, as things, the feature, tools, services that researchers can use for creating graphical video abstracts, cover art, posters, plain language summaries, whatnot. This is very important for science communication. And we've been talking about the need for science communication to re-establish trust in science itself. So I am very excited about it. I hope that this
And
yeah.
one thing I'm sure researchers will realize is increasingly publishers, particularly in the medical area, are expecting authors to produce things like video abstracts or graphical abstracts as part of their submissions, because as part of the submission process. So having a channel available to them to create those abstracts, I hope will be helpful for our researcher users.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our episode today, Tony. So this is once again, this is called "While My Reviewer Gently Weeps." I hope again, Tony, are you a fan of? Again, I think I've asked you this question, but this particular song, are you a fan of this song?
I am. It's a lovely song, and there's a fantastic version of this by Prince.
Oh,
That's a fantastic guitar solo.
You cut out for the last sentence. Can you repeat yourself, please?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I have occasional audio problems on this laptop. No, I was just saying there's a version where Prince, the late Prince, plays this most superb guitar solo on my guitar, while my guitar gently weeps, which I'd urge everybody who likes guitar playing to do a search on YouTube and find.
And Tony, do you post your guitar playing content on YouTube?
I have.
Okay.
But I'm not going to share the links.
But where can they find more about Tony Inago? And
so you can find out if you need to contact me. I'm on LinkedIn, as is KK. Just search for Tony O'Rourke or search for Krishna Kumar Ventuke.
Venkatachalam. That's why I call myself Dr. KK. It's
easier for people. Or just look for me at tonyo@inago.com.
Right. And
we encourage any submissions, any ideas you have for topics in PubShorts.
Yes. And obviously, if you want to find more about Inago, Trinka, Inago 1, please search for us on any, I think, social media platform or on Google. And if you're watching this live or after watch on demand on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification icon, and share the videos with your family if you find the content interesting, because we would like this content to reach as many people who would enjoy or benefit from the content. That's our goal, Tony. So that brings us to the end of PubShorts episode 16. Tony, do you have any exciting plans for the weekend? Are you doing anything interesting?
My English, I'm a member of an English folk orchestra, and we have a gig at the weekend.
Okay.
We're performing.
Is it being live streamed like this?
No. Okay. I wish.
All right. So we might have, for the first time, Tony, we've been thinking about bringing in guest speakers. We might have our colleagues who are at the STM Association Innovator Fair, actually. So we might have them as guests in the next episode. So we are looking forward to that. But that will have to be the next week. And until then, this is Dr. KK signing off for PubShorts on behalf of everyone and on behalf of Tony. Tony, bye-bye. We will see each other and everybody in the next stream. Bye-bye.